So, Shalom Aleichem, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Schmoozing with Avi. I am so excited with our guests today because I hate to say it, I didn't know a lot about them. I had heard the name, but I wasn't 100% familiar with their work. And now that I've seen their videos and listened to their music, I am absolutely blown away by the band that called Mostly Kosher. And apparently kosher is in. It's very hip to be kosher. We have with us Liav Sofer and Janice Mautner-Markham. And let me tell you a little bit about the band, and then I'll invite them to join us. And we're just very excited to have these young people dedicated to keeping the legacy of Yiddishkeit alive. So in 2016, Mostly Kosher had the honor of being the first Jewish music ensemble at the Disney parks and was met with critical acclaim, including a special on PBS. The idea that these guys opened Disney to klezmer and Judaism is something I am absolutely in love with. Mostly Kosher's band leader is Liav Sofer. He's a Los Angeles-based, community-driven artist exploring the intersection of music and societal healing, focusing both on homelessness, social and emotional connections, as well as Jewish cultural heritage. He's recognized as the Jewish Journal's esteemed 30 under 30. He leads the band Mostly Kosher, dedicated to preserving and progressing the cultural folk music of Judaic heritage. His other honors include the California State University Long Beach Distinguished Alumni Award, presenting the commencement speech for both 2020 and 2021's College of Arts graduating classes. He's a speaker, presenter, keynote panelist for multiple conferences and workshops in social justice, health, and arts for entities such as the National Organization of Arts in Health, Los Angeles County Office of Education, the DMH, and the UCLA Public Health Mentorship Program, the Association of Performing Artists Professionals in New York, the TEDx Stage, and the Atlantic's Renewal Summit. So, already we're seeing a theme of social justice and tikkun olam and legacy building and the future. Janice Mautner-Markham is Los Angeles-based artist, activist, violinist, and arts educator, and also is one of the founding members of Mostly Kosher. Her compositions and violin stylings can be heard on various television and film soundtracks, most recently the horror film The Black Room. Janice's klezmer composition will be heard in the upcoming feature film The Accursed, where she and Mostly Kosher bandmates appear in the opening scenes. She's proud to be featured on some of her favorite artists' recordings, including Chuck E. Weiss's Red Beans and Weiss, produced by Tom Waits, which I am just so blown away by, as well as his soon-to-be-released posthumous album. As a musician and actor, Janice has numerous regional and off-Broadway credits and was honored to serve as the understudy for Lisa Gutkin during the Broadway touring production of Indecent at the Music Center's Amundsen Theater. Lisa is a very dear friend of ours. She's done several of these schmoozes with me in various capacities, as well as with Rebecca Teichman, the Tony Award-winning director of Indecent. I, too, have done Indecent in South Florida, and I've consulted on several productions. It's one of the greatest shows that deal with the Jewish experience and Yiddish theater and legacy. She is also a co-founder and music director of the Jewish Youth Orchestra, a project of the Jewish Federation of San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys. And additionally, Janice has been the artistic director of the Vox Box Arts Collective since 1991, which includes youth arts outreach, multidisciplinary arts production, and a Spanish immersion arts camp. She's performed for Cafe Europa, as have I, the Holocaust survivor groups in Los Angeles. They're all over the world for over a decade, and she's now on the music outreach administrative team. She is currently a master's candidate in social justice and human rights at Arizona State University. Thank God we still have time to actually interview them in spite of these enormously long bios, but they are so impressive. And I wanted you all out there to know who we're dealing with. So please, Janice and Liav, join me and let's schmooze. So,
hey, Avi.
is there anything that I neglected to say that you would like me or that you would like to add to your very impressive bios?
I cook a good satay sometimes.
Nice.
I'm just kidding.
Not to mention my Jewish Federation recognition of being one of the great 60 under 60.
Wow, and I missed that just by this much. Good. So before we get into like the real meat, the kosher meat of this discussion, tell us please about your backgrounds. And, what was your Jewish quotient, the JQ, when you were growing up? And what attracted you? What magnetized you into this particular genre?
You want to go first, Janice?
You can go. You're the one with the Cantor Mama.
Let's hear about the Cantor Mama.
My mother is Chazan Judy Sofer. She was in Pasadena Synagogue and then in Long Beach, both in Los Angeles area for many years. And so I did grow up as a cantor's boy. And I think as most rabbi and cantorial children do, when you grow up with a professional Jew as a parent, it can sometimes, take away the spirituality and sometimes you're feeling separated from it all. So my way to connect to Judaism was never in the Jewish aspects of it. It was always in the music. It was that music that became a new language. And we think we all learn the prayers growing up and we all think of them as a second language. But when you're a cantor's son, you're learning multiple melodies for prayers as a second, and it becomes your second language. And I think we all know that when you start hearing the melody of a chant and of a kiddush, then it brings you back to that childhood moment sitting at Nell Chapel, the wooden pews in that synagogue, the classic Reform synagogue. You're sitting in there trying to just wait to be done and go out in the playground. But so I think that the Jewish connection also comes from my dad's side. I'm half Israeli. So my father is Mizrahi, Israeli. His family's background is from Baghdad. And my mother's side is Ukrainian, American Jew, been here for a good at least five generations. She's Ashkenazi, he's Mizrahi, so I'm half and half. And
Juliet, I mean,
yes.
West Side Story, just
but my mom
originally written.
Was it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was supposed to be East Side Story, right?
That's right. It was supposed to be Ashkenazi Sephardic. And then they said, you can't do that. It'll never sell. And they turned it into West Side Story.
I did not even know that. That's beautiful. My mother was, she did Aliyah. And so she felt very Middle Eastern. She even cooks. She doesn't cook Ashkenazi. She cooks Sephardic Mizrahi. So I also grew up going back to Israel as a child every summer. I was this close from being born there. My older siblings was born there. So I was born here in California, but I spoke Hebrew as my first language, and then went to elementary school or preschool and came back crying the first day. My mom's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't understand anybody. They're all speaking English." And so I have the family culture, the Israeli culture, that Moshav feeling. I have the melodies, and they've all enriched my childhood to be where I'm at now.
Did you rebel? Did you actually go away from Judaism during your teenage years or whenever rebellions happen nowadays?
I just was always on the outside of it because I'm seeing the professional view of it. When you're growing up as a cantor's son, you're not going for spirituality. You're going because the professional is paid to be the leader there and to be there. And my mother also is a spiritual person in her own right, but nonetheless, when you're in on the same conversations and you're sitting in the back of the cantor's office, listening to all of the things that go through the governance of keeping a synagogue going and shepherding community and being the professionals and the leaders that are responsible for that community. I think many of us can assume that rabbis and temple leaders and clergy, they play this hard balance of how to they themselves stay connected while trying to lead everyone else through connection. So it's a struggle, and I had to see it firsthand. So it pulled my Judaism part in. I'm already a pragmatic, logical personality kind of person, but I was already seeing all of it being analyzed even from a young age. So I saw it from the outside. I got a weird box office peanut gallery view to the workings of organized religion and Judaism.
To life, l'chaim, 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 to life. If you've been lucky, then Sunday was not worse than Monday was. Drink l'chaim to life, l'chaim, 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 to life. One day it's honey and raisin cake, the next day is stomach ache. Drink l'chaim. Great men that have written words of wisdom to be used when hardship must be faced. Life obliges us with hardship, so these words of wisdom, won't they go to waste? Oh, to us and our good fortune, be happy, be healthy, long life. And if our good fortune never comes, here's to whatever comes. Drink the fire. L'chaim, l'chaim to life. Life has a way of confusing us, blessing and bruising us. Drink l'chaim.
That was amazing.
How early did you start performing?
Well, I was playing clarinet. My two performance degrees is in clarinet and opera, actually. And I was doing clarinet in the shul band that my mother was organizing at the temple for Fridays. And that is where I met Janice.
Ah, which takes us to Janice. Tell us, what's your, how did you come to it?
Well, it's funny because I sort of had my Jewish life and my musical life going along in these sort of parallel paths, but not intersecting very much, except maybe when I was a kid, I'd play some sunrise, sunset, for the family. That was just sort of par for the course. But I grew up in a very classical family musically. My dad is a wonderful pianist, 92 years old, still practices every day. And my wonderful violin and viola teacher, my uncle Arthur of blessed memory. And the two of them sort of ended up giving birth, in a sense, to thousands and thousands of musicians out of their students. So many students. And then us blood-related kids all play musical instruments. But it was definitely more of the classical ilk. It really wasn't until after theater conservatory and being in my world of academia for a while and doing some off-Broadway theater that I ended up back in Los Angeles after my East Coast stint and met Liav as I was raising my two children. And so that sort of brings us to the story of how Mostly Kosher started, which we could delve into if you would like.
Yes, I would love to hear about the creation of Mostly Kosher. What inspired you guys to get together, and how did you come to the name? Not Mostly Kosher, not half kosher.
Well, I'll start the very beginning of it, but then I need to pass it over to because he really kind of kicks off the main part of the story. But I live in Eagle Rock, Los Angeles, and the shul that my kids were going through their beginnings of their schooling, their Hebrew school life, is the Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, where Liav's mom was a Hazan at the time. And so I was, recommended somehow. They needed some more musicians, and I started playing for services. Very much at the sort of the beginning of that time with Liav's mom, Hazan Judy Sofer. And do you want to take it from there?
You were already a musician before that, just not playing necessarily in temples or Jewish.
Exactly. I had, my classical training. Then I had a number of decades playing progressive rock in the clubs, Los Angeles.
She was a staple punk rock violinist for a lot of singer-songwriters in LA, playing the Mollies and the very famous clubs in the Mint back in the 80s and 90s, and she's became,
For those in the know, the Whiskey, the Roxy, Club Lingerie, all those places. Sure. And so the rock jazz world I was definitely familiar with. And then I would do quartet and trio gigging for private parties and concerts on occasion. So that was sort of my music world prior to playing for services, which I very much enjoyed.
And Liav, before Mostly Kosher, were you singing gigs out doing punk rock, kind of stuff? What were you? Where was your performance oriented? Yeah,
well, I mean, I hated learning music growing up. I hate music. No, my mom started me on piano lessons when I was 6, and I threw tantrums until I can get out of it. I was a little brat. Then I got into 5th grade, and you know how I think it's almost nationwide. It became a norm that in 5th grade you pick orchestra, choir, or band if they're going to do a music program. And I remember them going down the line and offering you a brass mouthpiece or a clarinet mouthpiece and saying which one you could make a better sound out of. And the clarinet worked out for me, but I already had some music experience from the lessons, a couple years of lessons I had. And so I was reading really well, and I enjoyed the fact that I was ahead of the curve musically in some senses in my colleagues. So growing up through like elementary, middle school, and high school, I was actually more of an academic with the clarinet. all the while, I remembered, a few songs. When you learn something on piano and then there's a piano in the house, of course you walk over to the piano and you play chopsticks until ad nausea, right? So I was beyond the level of chopsticks when I quit piano, but my mom, being a cantor who's also a pianist, had books everywhere. And what I would do is I would just open up books, and I have such ADD. I never wanted to learn a song. I never wanted to practice a song, but I loved reading a new song each day. So what happened is I became naturally actually one of the strongest sight readers amongst all my colleagues, because I ended up having more fun going through a whole book of whatever, American standards, musical theater standards, whatever books my mom had, Shabbat, liturgical music, and just BSing my way through it and getting to the end and then moving on to the next song. My sight reading skills became very strong, and I self-taught myself. And by the time I was in high school, at 15, I was already taking professional accompaniment gigs, because accompanists are, it's more important not for them to hit every note, but to sight read well and to follow and keep things moving, which I was very good at. I was very good at that at a young age. So I was in high school already either playing clarinet for Shabbat, or I was doing accompaniment gigs on piano, or by 16 years old, some choirs, and a lot of it got started connected through my mother. So she had a choir and I started accompanying for them, or my high school band teachers and choir teachers, and they would start pulling me in and finding me other gigs. So when I started Mostly Kosher, I wasn't that far out of high school. I was 19, and 19 or 20, I can never remember exactly how old I was, but I was a clarinet major and an opera major, and I was playing piano to pay my way through college. So I would accompany quite often. I was accompanying or playing for Shabbats in synagogues all over LA, 3 gigs a week to keep paying for things. And I was playing for a wedding in Santa Ana, California, and I was at a synagogue, and I played piano. I did my gig. Afterwards, I did what every great musician should always learn to do, and it happens to be part of the name of this spectacular show. I schmoozed. Avi, I schmoozed. I went after. I was schmoozing. I'm talking to people. There's a woman. Her name was Beverly Singer, and she says, "Oh, talking. Oh, you're a clarinet major, and you're Jewish. You must play klezmer." And I never played klezmer a day in my life. I mean, I played Shabbat music, which touches on, the modes and the keys, but I didn't actually ever open a klezmer song, And I did what all good young artists did, and I lied. And I said, "Of course I play klezmer." And she said, "Oh, well, you must have a klezmer band." And I said, "Of course I have a klezmer band." And she said, "Well, great. My name is Beverly Singer. I'm the president of the Sisterhood here at Temple Beth Shalom in Santa Ana. We have a big gala every year. I want to book your band to be the featured concert for our gala next year. It's going to be your band, Liav." And I was looking at her and I went, "Great.
How long do I have?"
And I jumped in the car and I started driving home, and I immediately started calling all of my university colleagues, and I was calling all my university Jewish music major colleagues.
I remember that phone call, actually.
Yeah. There's not many of my university colleagues that are Jewish and musicians at the time, so I ran out of them pretty quickly. I started calling, and I was just like, "Hey, you want to be in my klezmer band? Hey, you want to be..." I started reaching the people who were not Jewish, but I knew they were strong musicians and into global music, and I just said, "You want to be in my klezmer band?" They're like, "What's klezmer?" I said, "We're going to find out together." And then in klezmer, you need violin, and I actually wasn't really close with a lot of the violinists at my school, but one violinist I had already had experience sharing the stage with many times was Janice. And so even though that Janice wasn't part of she joined the band with all these university kids, but
I'm an old lady.
and And she brought Adam Levy, who was her collaborator for a long time, who's now been our bassist, who's a founding member and our bassist. And so Adam and Janice came to join this Cal State Long Beach klezmer band vibe. And we needed to name the show. And our founding trombone player, Mike King, he noticed that some of us were Jewish, some of us were not Jewish. And then there's the joke that we all experience as Jews when people come up and they discover you're Jewish. And they're like, oh, you're Jewish. Are you kosher? And what do we all say? We say, yeah, mostly. So that's how we came down to this name, Mostly Kosher, which we had no idea. We had never thought it was going to stick. Never thought we would brand it like we did. But, one day we drew a logo of it on a napkin, and then it looks something like this. I don't know if you could see this.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
And it felt like, okay, I guess we have something here. Called up all of my Jewish colleagues in college who I knew were talented musicians, and then just said, "You want to be in my klezmer band? You want to be in my klezmer?" And then when that list ran out, started calling the non-Jews. "Do you want to be in my klezmer? You want to be in my? Don't know what klezmer band is? Don't worry, we'll find out together." And then it kind of like, we just went from there.
So after we had done this study and really learned about the roots of this music, we really felt compelled to make it our own. And I think that heightened the joy of it because, although there's, of course, worth in playing the tradition of where we came from, and that in itself is wonderful, but really finding our own voice. And that's where we started to come up with these sort of mashups, if you will, that combines more contemporary styles of even hip hop into the music, which, it can be sort of a slippery slope because you want to pay homage, you want to respect the music. And it's not about dumbing it down or that it's not good enough in its original form. It's really finding our own voices.
All right, Janice, Mike, show what you got.
Klezmer music is a bridge between a wonderfully rich historical music, through the Holocaust and well before that, and modern music, especially with what we're doing and how we're really throwing it all in a food processor, and going for it.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
It's more crossing of genres and also more pop influences too, but with the intention of trying to bring our music to a very accessible platform. This isn't religious music. This is music of parties, of celebration, of drinking, of love and romance, of lullabies and tragic heartbreaking, and death, lots of tragedy. The point is that these are elements that everyone can relate to, and why can't this music belong to everyone in their hearts?
I really feel like there aren't limitations. We can do a family audience. Someone called us right now and said, okay, we need you at Temple Bethel. You need to play for the Sunday School. No problem. We'll do our 30-minute show, very interactive, it's fun. But we also want you to go and, play for some jazz club, down Culver City. Got it. So in a way, we can really tailor who we are and have it truly be who we are for all of these different audiences. And it's really fulfilling.
And in this music, you just like, everyone dance. Like you just get up there and play, and you're like feeding off the energy of the crowd, and it's a different mindset. So that's been a fun challenge for me to try to convey that energy and fun in my drumming, and step out of my shell a little bit.
It's important, it's cultural, it's part of people's upbringing. It's not just affiliated with religion. It's not Shabbat. I mean, this Yiddish Mama is like a love song, a lullaby. Nothing to do with Judaism, but it has to do more with the people and more with the heritage. And it kind of gave us some purpose and some identity to what we're doing. So the goals would be like continuing to do albums, continuing to tour and touring even more of the world, of course, and sharing this music so that it can belong to as many people as possible, but also to break some boundaries and like surprise people a little bit with some of the venues that we can stand on. I think if you saw klezmer music at Coachella, I think everybody would turn their heads a little bit.
So if we can just get the audience to not worry about what's on their cell phone and what's going on in their lives, if they can just let go and live in the moment for an evening, that's our goal.
We played the gala, and out of that one concert, I just want to add, we prepared for it like we were in university, so we're used to learning something new. Every semester, you're preparing for a whole new concert with all new repertoire that you have to study from scratch. So we just treated it like a recital. We're just going to pull all these arrangements, we'll make them our own. We're going to study the languages. We pulled Ladino and Yiddish, and I already knew Hebrew songs because of my background, but we pulled Ladino and Yiddish and stuff and klezmer songs, and we just studied it, and we just practiced and then performed it. But I picked a really strong group of musicians, and they all really liked the music. From that one concert, 5 more concerts came out. We started getting bookings, and that's why we even decided we needed to formalize the name.
Tell me a little bit about the research. You say, you spent a semester basically learning klezmer music because you didn't really know what klezmer music really was. You knew the nigunim from the temple, and there were melodies of certain kinds that were familiar. But klezmer is a whole genre that
Absolutely.
goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years. If you go back to the Brodersinger in the 1600s and then the 1800s and, the traveling musicians throughout Europe before the war. So where did your research take you? And Janice, I assume you probably had something to do with it as well.
Yes, I mean, it was interesting from my perspective because, Liav's background. Well, my 2 grandfathers were Hungarian and Croatian and Russian grandmothers. And so the sort of start of my musical journey was Hungarian gypsy music, and my grandfather, I know that the term gypsy is a little bit complicated, but he called himself a gypsy violinist. And so, mini sidebar, when I was at Klez Canada and I'd play music, I remember one of the old timers said to me, "You play like a Hungarian musician. You play like a Hungarian violinist." I mean, he literally knew where it was from. So I had to sort of figure out also, like what Liav's talking about, what are these sounds? What is the feel? What is this music? And I just want to give credit to some of our incredible mentors like Cantor Faith Steinsnyder, who did a lot of coaching and helping, I know, with the vocalist, but also the music and the feel with the Yiddishkeit and the music that we were encountering. And then, the usual suspects. At Klez Canada, we studied with members of the Klezmatics, of course, Lauren and Frank, and we did a lot of listening to YouTube and recordings and interviews, along with the music. And it was a deep dive, and we had to do it quickly.
Mm.
And one more quick anecdote I want to tell you, too, that was pretty funny. It was from that concert. And, of course, the type of music that we were playing was really varied. It wasn't the purest instrumental klezmer. It ran the gamut, as Liav mentioned. And so it was right after the first half of our concert, and I thought, wow, we killed it. This was awesome. It was just very invigorating and exciting. And this elderly man's rushing the stage. I'm like, oh my God, our first fan, and he comes all the way up to the stage and he's motioning to me, I said, yes. And he says, when's the klezmer gonna start? And I was kind of taken aback. And then all of a sudden I was thinking about it. I said, okay, so I was going through the different songs that we had done. Oh, there was the Yiddish art song, there was the, there was the Ladino song, and I'm going through, and it was, in a way, kind of the beginnings, still going through our educational process of, what klezmer is to various people, whether it's the traditional instrumental music, the freilachs, the bulgars, and then how that's defined. And I remember having a conversation with Liav about it. I mean, it's sort of ongoing. What should I say? Back from that time, but we still have these conversations. How do we define ourselves? So what is klezmer music? What is the music that we play? And how many times, Liav, have we changed how we describe our band in our elevator pitch even?
That was going to be my next big question for you guys. And Liav, perhaps you should answer this. How do you define your style? I'm listening to Crawdad Bulgar, right? And I'm listening to Ain't No Sunshine. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, and there's the klezmer. So how do you define what you guys play?
Well, a lot of people say you've got to learn the rules in order to break them. We started breaking things at the beginning. There's a lot of shattered glass all over the place. It's dangerous. To be honest, it's more simple than it feels, as far as the way it was birthed. In university, I was very lucky to have a very creative environment, and it was when I was arranging a lot. I was learning at my arranging skills, and I was studying a lot of jazz. I'm very much a jazz fan. I was in the vocal jazz group. I was in the jazz combos. And all jazz is about is taking pieces and reharmonizing them, rearranging them. So, and also I've had musical theater inspirations. I grew up also going to the musical theaters shows. So between like my, Billy Joel, kind of like Elton John influences, being a singer on a piano, my Jewish influences from my mom and the cantorial music, and the musicals that I would watch. And then now I'm in jazz and I'm in academia. All I kept looking through books. So you asked, how did we research? My answer is books. We had books of sheet music, and we have lead sheets. And as you know, you can pull up a lead sheet called Freilach number 5. And on another book, the same song is called Freilach 19. In another book, it's called, Kasanas Freilach. Sometimes it's not even Freilach anymore. Now it's a Bulgar. So as we know, the world library of klezmer music is probably one of the most uniquely, I don't want to call it chaotic, but it is very uniquely a little bit all over the place because it's folk music.
Very diverse.
Let's use that term, because we are a diaspora, and this music developed in different parts of the diaspora at the same time, and were shared. So as a vernacular of music rather than a study, right? And now now in the resurgence of the last century are we actually turning it into a study in our world of klezmer scholars. But I looked at these lead sheets, most of the time not being able to find recordings that even go with these melodies, not really knowing exactly how it's supposed to go. And I was so enthralled with continuing to practicing my arranging skills. So So when Janice is speaking about when's the klezmer going to start, I think what's also to add to that story, there was a lot of songs that started as a klezmer song, but when we arranged it to do what we wanted. Yeah. Janice just told you, she has a rock and roll background. My background was all these different things. We had band members in there who had a huge diverse amount of backgrounds. Now we have a Peruvian clarinetist, woodwind player in the band. We have so many different backgrounds of people who aren't all Jewish. So we all bring different approaches to the arrangements, and that's exactly the fun of it. I'll just say, add to that, Pink Martini was an influence of, it's a band that says, we're going to do whatever we want. Our album is literally a trip around the world. And I liked that. I felt like that they didn't find fame by having to pigeonhole themselves. In fact, their pigeonhole was the fact that they are global artists. And I wanted to resemble that, but through a Jewish cultural music lens. And yet, as we've grown and grown and grown, there's still some elements that surge. As Janice mentioned, there's been moments where it's changed. We were very much in a cabaret vibe, musical theater cabaret mashups and arrangements versions in the beginning. And then it's now in our new album, which we'll be talking about, it's really started leaning towards alternative rock. And I'm even, in the back of my head, I've been kind of a ghost description of this new album. I'm calling it the Klezmer Rock Opera album. Oh, wow. So I think that the whole, why do artists have to name ourselves? I was sorry to just add this last turn of the thought here, but maybe that's going to happen. Maybe that whole archetype or stereotype of us needing to name our genre will eventually fall away to the wayside in the first place. Right. And I can say to your listeners, well, who are we? How do we describe ourselves? The most enchanting way to find out is to listen,
Right. And it is very theatrical. Let me just say, the video of Ain't No, Sunshine is like a theater piece.
Yeah.
And it was so
filmed in a theater.
Yeah. And suddenly I felt like I was in the theater watching a show, and it was great. And I come from a theater background, obviously, so that is very appealing to me. Janice, you want to take a stab at style? How do you, look, I get what you're saying. You don't want to pigeonhole and say, okay, we are postmodernist klezmer. Yeah, I get it.
No, but there are definitely ways that we can sort of have some definitions to, be able to sort of have something tangible to hook onto. But it definitely feels organic. So we started with the studies we talked about. Our first album was much more traditional, even with some creative arrangements that included some jazz modes and such. And then we started getting into our big mashup phase. Not a phase. I think we're always going to be doing what we would call mashups, which we really enjoy, whether it's taking a popular tune and fusing klezmer or whatever you would like to call it. I feel like now, present day, with this new album, if I can dive into that,
Jeez.
It also feels just kind of like the tree's growing. We had, the trunk of the tree, and then our mashups were out into the branches now and exploring if we're writing in a sense from scratch, whatever that means. Because obviously we're still taking on everything that we've played, everything we've studied, everything we've felt from the music that we've learned already, but really creating original lyrics, original melodies, based on stacking on top of what we've already done. What would that be? And that's one of the things I feel really proud of, is the fact that one of the things we try to convey, especially when we do our ed outreach, is to not think of folk music as past. But somehow there's this connection of folk music to something old and past and not living and not building and not growing. And one of the things we want to do is redefine what folk music even is, and have it be something that's present and future, as well as looking back. We're in it and looking to the future. Yeah. And so we hope to do that and continue to do that in the music that we play, how we perform it. And so going back to your question as far as defining it in genre, I think it does include the klezmer feels, the heart of what that is, but also incorporates my rock and jazz blues experiences, as well as the jazz backgrounds of my bandmates and all of the opera, whatever they've brought in and put in the soup. And really, our album is the sum total of that exploration, and we're very excited to share that with everyone.
You get a line and I'll get a pole, honey. You get a line and I'll get a pole, babe. You get a line and I'll get a pole. Let's go fishing in the crawdad hole, honey, baby mine. Oh, you get a line and I'll get a pole, honey. You get a line and I'll get a pole, babe. Oh, you get a line and I'll get a pole. Let's go fishing in the crawdad hole, honey, baby mine. I'll get a pole, babe. You get a line and I'll get a pole. Let's go fishing in the crawdad hole, honey, baby mine. You get a line and I'll get a pole, honey. I'll get a pole, babe. You get a line and I'll get a pole. Let's go fishing in the crawdad hole, honey, baby mine.
One of the things I've noticed a lot, and one of the reasons organizations like ours are starting to find a global audience, is this idea that, as the generations continue, each generation wants to find its own take on what it may remember. Oh, I remember there was a melody. I remember there was a food. And now it's a new take. And that's why when we talk about Yid Life Crisis, the Boys in Montreal, or Kosher Dills and the whole Jewish hip hop, rap scene, which is huge now, Nissim Black and all these, amazing younger people finding a new way. Liav, tell us about the new album and how you are expanding the envelope. And then I want to hear about Disney, because to me, that's enormous.
I'm Jewish. I have to admit, there's a connection to your tribe that provides opportunity, and I want to acknowledge the privileges as of being part of a Jewish community as well. And it happens to other communities too. There's people that grow up in the church and they go and they do Christian rock, and they can have a lot of success in that world. And sometimes I wonder if it is circumstantial, but either way, it feels like it's kind of the hand that's been dealt to me. I'm kind of a yes man by personality. And so I'm Jewish. I'm connected to the music. I want to be doing music, and I want to find a niche where my voice can be heard. And there was no klezmer bands in LA. There was 2, and they were very purist. There was technically 3 or 4, but they were like very part-time as far as like regularly gigging ones that are working on their branding of who they are. There was maybe 1 or 2. They're very purist, and they do weddings. But there wasn't concertizing bands that were doing like what the Klezmatics had kind of defined, which is that we're going to open up this genre and explore. And it wasn't happening in LA. And so when I saw that this is a place, and also just the reactions of the audience, we got 5 gigs out of the first gig. When you start seeing this happen and you start continuing to say yes, eventually, you ask the question, how do I make this mine? I started arranging for this band when I was 20. So I'm arranging, my inspirations was Jamie Cullum, a great jazz artist who does jazz rock. And I wanted to arrange Jamie Cullum in my klezmer songs. I want to arrange for the musicians of my generation in this folk music. And I wanted people who I share common interest in artists that we listen to also enjoy it and to be the ones coming to my show. I wasn't getting into klezmer to say, well, I'm going to, and I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this, but okay, I'm going to go into a genre that will pigeonhole me into playing for retirement homes and for synagogue special events, holidays, and bar mitzvah. That wasn't, which some people, it's a good business, by the way, and I don't bash it either, because there are people that just say, let's put a klezmer band so we can corner the market on weddings and bar mitzvahs, and they do great and they kick butt. But that just didn't feel like what was of interest. What was of interest was to say, how is this my voice in my heritage coming out? And I'm 20 and trying to discover that when I'm starting to arrange this music. And it's grown from there. I've grown. I actually, when I was 23, I started the Urban Voices Project, which was working in Skid Row in Los Angeles. And I'm starting to work with men and women who are homeless, and I'm seeing mental health and homelessness, and I'm becoming more active in social action there. And Janice came right down with me, even though she had been involved with social action issues even before I was born. But the point is that she would come in like, you know what I mean? She joined. She was so supportive that even Mostly Kosher as a band then started playing in Skid Row regularly for performances and even in the prisons. And it became a part of an extension of who we were. Oh, Liav, our band lead, is going to go start this nonprofit. Well, we're there. And so now it's Adam and Janice who make up the house band of when the choir from Skid Row goes and performs. It's just, we've kind of melded. And so now I'm looking at the heritage songs, and I'm looking at my life and the lessons I've learned, and I want to bring them in. So I started feeling as I wanted to continue tearing apart the songs even more and more, that first it was all rearranging a song, and then I said, what if I just quote a song or use this one thing? It's like they use in hip hop, they call it sampling. You sample one thing and then you make a whole new track. And so what this new album is, for example, the title track, This World Is Yours. What This World Is Yours is actually the song Bar Baruch ate zingte tate. It's a slow, you know it. So this Yiddish lullaby has inspired us. We played around with it. We studied the song. We got into it. I actually even arranged a full choir arrangement of the song, a chamber arrangement of the song in its original lullaby form. And then we got inspired to say, you know what? Let's just take the melody. And I couldn't find any translated songs out there. And I said, let's go and translate it and let's put it in English, because I personally don't speak Yiddish. I have to study it. So if I want people like me to show up, I need them to also be able to appreciate it. So I started saying, let's just quote the most important lyric that's our favorite lyric. Let's take the rest and translate it. We not liking how it's translating, let's just do our interpretation. And not only that, our response. So if the song presents an idea, what is Mostly Kosher's response to the idea? And now the song is starting extremely fast. It is a upbeat Balkan. I wish I could pull the piano and show you an example, but it's an upbeat thing that goes very fast, and it is about energy, and it's a rock song, and it's like a Balkan rock song, and I'll just play you the opening lick just so you can hear it. And it's no longer the same lyrics, but so it's an upbeat, fast Balkan energy with a hip-hop beat behind it. And I'm singing, Baruch Ate, my father sings, worn and tired, his faith to which he clings. And the hands a tremor with the trials of his life, he strikes a match to burn away the strife. It's a slight translation. And then as the song goes, halfway through, we have this whole nother concept, which is our response. The chorus that says, and it's yours now, and it's here now, and this world is yours. Fight for justice, love so bloodless, from this hour more. The song says nothing of those words, but that's what it inspires of us.
Wow.
And it allowed us to respond to the song, and we put it in the same song. And this describes this whole album. Was one song which is completely 100% original, and the only thing is that after each chorus there's a interlude, a musical interlude, and only if you're a klezmer scholar would you maybe notice that we took that from Freilach 19, that one little interlude, and that became the instrumental response, but also this interlude from Naftuli Bradvine, who had an eccentric character historically, a clarinetist from back in the 20th century, extremely eccentric, and also, people wondered if it was a bipolarism that had to do with what was going on. And the song is responding to bipolarism and schizophrenia, and we felt that there's a connection, there's a bond here, to even the person who originally composed that melody has relevance to the experience of what we want to try to say in our modern responses to the world around us now. So even if we're quoting a melody, it's not just quoting the melody because, it sounds nice. Even we're finding a depth of a layer that somehow bridged these two worlds together, but it's completely original lyrics about mental health. And this felt like a gorgeous way for us to identify how we work, because it's taking Judaism and its music and its story and its history, and it's us getting to say, how do we respond in 2021, 22?
And I love that you're connecting the social justice elements, the tikkun olam elements, mental health elements, and bringing a whole new world to our legacy, to our musical legacy, which is amazing. Janice, do you want to tell us a little bit about the new album from your perspective, and then tell us about your upcoming concerts? And I know you guys have an Indiegogo page now, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, I'm glad that Liav was able to bring in the social justice aspect, and it's definitely inherent in quite a few of the tracks in different ways. We also have actually a brand new, more traditional klezmer tune, which is my very first klezmer composition at age 54, 2 years ago, not to age myself, and which was very exciting. So I kind of went all the way back to the roots and figured out, we're constantly playing klezmer tunes that we find, like Liav said, in sheet music or what have you. Let me see if I can figure out something that we could do that would be in the style, because I'm still sort of in school in my brain and all of this. And so that's been really exciting. It's called Vitebsk, to honor the town that Marc Chagall spent much of his childhood. So that is going to be the first track on the album. I just want to mention also, besides the song "This World Is Yours" that Liav sang and played some of, we also are debuting a music video. I suppose it's the first music video from the album. Is that right, Liav?
Yeah, it's a lyric music video that when you watch it, there's a special secret to how we created the lyrics and how they reveal themselves. So it's in partnership with a company called Rainworks. And yeah, I think that you guys should be able to keep your eye out for that music video, or you might be able to show it here, depending on when this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really exciting to put that together. And as you've seen, we really love to delve into the creativity of our music videos. So that will be coming up. And the other thing I just want to mention too about the album is, we've tried to have a part of the carryover from our first, even though it's definitely grown into this new place. We also have representation from different fields, different cultures, different areas, because, of course, Jews are all over the world, and our band members are from various places around the globe. We still have references to and music that's inspired by Ladino melodies, and I'm just very excited to get that music out into the world, and would love to tell you about our touring that we have coming up. One of the things, of course, that's been challenging, which I don't have to explain to anyone, has, of course, been this little thing called the global pandemic. So it's funny, not ha-ha funny, but oh my God. We were actually supposed to be out on the road March of 2020 with our own tour, Pacific Northwest, and then Liav and I were going to be going on the road with Craig Taubman, wonderful colleague and mentor of ours. Yeah. So that all did not happen. So we're sort of mending all of that right now and trying to put the pieces together and figure out when and how to be able to go on the road. We have able to maintain our 4 dates that we're going to be playing in Arizona end of this month, which we're very excited about. So we have that starting the end of January, and then we will be doing our Southwest tour all the way up into Washington State, and that will be in April. And then after that, we have actually a family show that we will be doing, which is probably a whole other schmoozing with Avi, a whole other conversation. But yeah.
And with any luck, we'll be able, now that things are hopefully going to start coming back again, we would love to have you join one of our live Why I Love Yiddish Fests here in South Florida. We're in the southeast corner of the country. And that would be amazing.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Wonder this time where she's gone. Wonder if she's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. I know, 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 hey, I don't leave your thing alone. 'Cause ain't no sunshine when she's gone. 2, 3, 4. I know, I know, I know, I know, I know, know, I 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 know. Hey, I'd leave your thing alone. 'Cause ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
You have an Indiegogo page. You guys are raising funds for. Tell us about
The album. Thank you for helping to make sure that gets out there, because it's important. As you all know, it's hard, and artists have lost a lot of work in COVID, so it's harder to keep things funded, as performances usually help to fund sometimes the studio projects. We been in the studio for a couple of years, and we're done with the mixing, and we're actually just finishing the mastering. And there's still a lot of expenses related to getting all of this wrapped up and done, printing and whatnot. And normally we might be able to help fund some of it on our own after we've been doing some touring and things. And since we're not, we're doing a fundraiser. But we don't want you to think of this as just purely as give us money. But this is your opportunity to also claim the CD for yourself, to claim some beautiful merchandise. Think of this as a pre-order opportunity. And if you go on the Indiegogo, which we'll share with Avi's team, the link will, or you can even go on Indiegogo and type, on their website and Google Indiegogo, INDIEGOGO, Mostly Kosher, you'll find us. Or you go to our website, mostlykosher.com, and it's right there on the front of the website. Either way, it's going to be an opportunity to both grab the pre-order of the CD, other accompanying merchandise that goes with it, as well as supporting artists that are trying to continue this music. It'll help us finish the costs, getting it all wrapped up. If we hit our goal and do well, then we'll be able to continue creating more of these music videos, for example. And it would mean a lot. it's going to be a world that is, this whole COVID thing is taking an effect, and not just still closing down, but it's gonna be a slow coming back to normal anyways, and it's not going to just all swing back right away. So we know that you're hurting too out there, for those that are listening, and it's a place, if you're in the place to give, and you're in the place to be able to order some stuff, consider it, please. And
go to mostlykosher.com, Indiegogo Mostly Kosher, and become part of the Mostly Kosher Meshuggah and Mishpucha. So there
Absolutely.
you go, become part of the family, because you guys are great. I love what you're doing. You still haven't told me about Disney. I want to finish up our interview, because to me that is like, how did you guys convince Disney? And then when you did the PBS special, I guess it was Union Station, LA. They were showing clips of you guys performing at Union Station.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the entire background is all Hanukkah bushes and just, bright and beautiful, Christmas.
Yeah.
Tell us about that as we go out.
So, we're really excited to become a staple in LA for Jewish cultural representation. We have an ongoing partnership with our Skirball Cultural Center, which is a big magnet for that. And so we're regularly representing Hanukkah around LA at the different events. We perform at the Chandler Pavilion, which is the opera house there, usually representing Hanukkah quite every 2 years. We're back almost cyclically, and then Union Station. But it was 6 years ago when we got the call to represent Hanukkah and Judaism in a much bigger way than just Los Angeles. And that is because, if you are not aware, Disneyland in Anaheim, California, near Los Angeles, is where the Disneyland parks are. I think most people might know this. And they had, just the year before, 7 years ago, they had a new creative director, Susanna Tubert, who we owe her a lot. She's an Argentinian Jew who got the gig to supervise all live entertainment at the parks. And she immediately said, we need to change up the holidays. And it kind of what felt like a festival of Christmas every time we got to the end of the year. And she's like, we want this to now feel like Festival of the Holidays and honor all the diversity of our community. And so they brought in a Diwali celebrating Bollywood dance team. They brought in singers to celebrate Kwanzaa. They brought in the mariachi divas to represent Feliz Navidad. And so, of course, they started scouting who can represent Judaism, who can represent Hanukkah for what might be the first Hanukkah or Jewish production at the parks. And they're even open to things that even if it wasn't a band, like, is there a Jewish dance group, So they were scouting the nation, thinking of who is the right level of cultural accuracy and representation, but yet at the same time accessibility and high level energy and fun that is intergenerationally targeting, all generations. And granted, even though we've done a lot of the clubs, we could do club nights that are like 21 and over, let's party. And we've also done kids shows. So we had those skill sets to be able to adapt. And when they came to come, we had a Disneyland scout in our audience, it came from actually couple of our musician friends and members of the band had already been playing in Disney as well as part of the Disneyland band and marching band stuff. So they mentioned our name. They come and scout us. And when they first asked us to do it, we actually had members of the group that were really hesitant. In fact, was ready to say no. And we were all scared of us becoming, is it going to be this Disney swallowing us and just calling us the Disneyland Jew Band? Because Disneyland has a reputation of being so big, just so huge. But what is the pleasant surprise is after we decided to take the gamble or whatnot, even despite our hesitations, they were so collaborative. They let us take the lead in really advising and consulting on how Hanukkah should be represented. But not only that, more than that, how Judaism should be represented. Because if you go see the show, there's 1.5 Hanukkah songs in our full 20-minute show. The rest of the 20-minute show is a journey around the diaspora as we take you into Cuando Re Nimrod, a Ladino song. And then we take you into Yiddish, songs like Dos Keshner Veshtikala. And we are actually purposefully using Hanukkah as actually the gateway drug to the Jewish diaspora. So that when we have them come in, it's not educating these audiences, thousands and thousands of national and international audiences from countries around the world and places where there's no Judaism represented. We're using the holiday to invite them in, but when they're inside, it's all of the l'chaims and the horas and the celebration of a simcha that we are sharing with them, and hopefully ask that they take home with them so that they can have a little bit of that ownership of a new culture and that dip into a new immersive experience, even taking that home with them and becoming fans and saying, I don't even have to be Jewish to really want to dance the hora. You know what I mean? And that's the whole point of the show. And
Right. And when you're in Los Angeles or Orange County where there are Jews aplenty, I don't know. It's like, I guess I didn't work through my brain the fact that there would be a multi-generational family that would have their very first experience with live Jewish music, and it would be us. I mean, this was so humbling, really. Besides the shocked Jews that came across Mao Tsur at Disneyland, there's that, right? And then there's the fact that we were able to really build our fan base in such an amazing way. We just had no idea what was going to happen in that respect, and it's been surprisingly wonderful, really.
We had the opportunity to franchise the production and send a group out to Epcot for some time, and unfortunately that discontinued a couple years back. But we're still strong at Anaheim, and it's led to this national following where it's helped us also, justify touring around the nation because it's built the awareness of who we are. And I also just want to say that, I think we all get this in the Jewish world, that you play a Oifen Pripachik and someone comes up and they come up in tears and they say, I haven't heard this song in 60 years and it's opening my heart. But it's a whole nother level of that, of connection when you're hearing it at Disneyland. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but that's what I love. And you guys are taking the legacy of Yiddishkeit. And when I say Yiddishkeit, it's not just Yiddish language. It's Yiddish language and Ladino and Mughrabi and all Jewish culture, thousands of years. And you're finding your way to bring it midor ledor, from one generation to the next generation. And thus the legacy continues. We are very privileged here at Why I Love Jewish to have you, to have schmoozed with you. And I encourage everyone to go to the Indiegogo page for Mostly Kosher, mostlykosher.com. Your YouTube channel is wonderful. And I can't wait until we find more and more ways to collaborate with you guys. Thank you. Ashenim dank. Ashenim and hartzik dank. Toda rabba, toda rabba.
Toda rabba.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Schmoozing with Avi. Go check him out, Mostly Kosher.
Thank you, Avi.
Thank you.